Okay, you're ready to go.
Thank you very much indeed, Daniel. So good afternoon. Happy New Year to everyone, if I haven't said it to you before. I would like to welcome members of the public to this meeting of the Corporate Parenting Subcommittee of the Children and Young People Committee. You are very welcome, and I hope that you find today's discussion interesting. The Council allows filming and photography at its public meetings, so please feel free to take pictures, tweet, blog, etc. during the meeting. However, can I ask you all to turn your mobile phones to silent or vibrate whilst the meeting is taking place? To help the flow of discussion, I intend to waive the committee procedure rule limiting members' contributions to 5 minutes. I will also allow members to speak more than once on each item if appropriate. However, please make sure that your contributions remain concise and to the point. To manage the discussion, I would also remind members and officers that all questions and responses should be directed through the chair. And I'm sure I don't need to tell you, just if you could remain muted, and if you wish to raise a question or to speak, if you could use your blue hand. I would like to begin today by welcoming Kevin Arrowsmith to the meeting. Kevin was elected as the new chair of the Cambridgeshire Foster Carers Association on the 10th of November and joins us as a non-voting observer. He succeeds John Priest, and I would like to place on record the subcommittee's thanks to John for the tremendous amount of work he did during his 2 years as chair of the Foster Carers Association. But welcome, Kevin. We're really pleased to see you. Where are you? Oh yes, I can see you. You're at the bottom. Right. Just to say that sadly we were not able to have the scheduled Children in Care Council informal meeting which we are going to have as part of our new strategy in terms of participation, because it was just felt not appropriate to have the first meeting on a Zoom until we'd quite worked out how to do it. But I'd like to thank the members of the committee who provided me with profiles of themselves and pictures, which Tony Darnell very kindly put together on a little leaflet, which we have sent to all our participants on the Children in Care Council. So they have an idea of who we are when we turn up, although we don't really know who they are, but we'll find that out. And we're looking forward to working out a strategy as to how we can actually replace this or do this, because obviously don't want to lose the opportunity of having their views and feedback. Today's meeting has a theme of education. And item 1 is apologies for absence and declarations of interest. We have not received any apologies, but does any member wish to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interest? Oh, put your blue hand up. I can't see that. So agenda item 2, minutes and action log. So item 2 is minutes and action log, and we're being asked to approve the minutes of the meeting on the 9th of September 2020. Are all members happy to do so? If you have anything that you wish to say, and Councillor Elisa Machini has, she's put up her blue hand. So Councillor Machini.
Oh, sorry, thank you very much. I don't really know when to raise this. I mean, this isn't actually to do with the minutes of the last meeting. It's a point that stems from potentially the minutes of the meeting we had in January 2020. So that's basically about a year ago. And I was wondering whether I should, well, first of all, is it possible to make an amendment to those minutes, or is it too late now?
What, for January 2020? I don't know. I'd have to ask Rashenda that.
Sorry, do you mean January 2019, Councillor?
2019.
No, I think I mean January 2020. Wasn't there a meeting?
2020. No, they will have been approved at the following meeting, so they can't be changed.
All right, okay. In which case, I'll tell you what, there was a point I wanted to make about a report that was brought to that committee, and an update to that report, which might be more appropriate to raise under future meetings agenda or something like that at the end of this meeting rather than at the beginning. Is that okay if I do that?
Absolutely fine. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. We want to hear what you've got to say.
Oh yeah, well I can say it now if you prefer. I mean, it's sort of.
Well, I don't see that. I don't know how you minute this, Rashenda, but you can just take that from the floor, can't we?
You can certainly, I think I'd suggest taking it at the end, because obviously this is only looking at the minutes of the last meeting and just the accuracy of those. So yes, I think
That's absolutely fine. I will do that at the end.
So nobody else has put their blue hand up, so we can assume that the minutes are of the last meeting of the 9th of September are fine. And you've received a copy of the updated action log, which was included in the published papers. I'm glad to say that most of these are now completed, which is really, really good. But are there any questions on this, or are members just happy to note it? So have anybody got any points to raise? They could raise their blue hand. No? Okay, Rashenda, we can assume that these...
Sorry, Liz, sorry, I put up a real hand because I was struggling to find my blue hand. I just wanted to ask, for the action log, it's probably the forward work plan. Could we ask that we have a sort of regular report on health?
Well, so right, that actually changes the agenda pattern that we've got. So we would have to look at that, and I think we've got an update on the dashboard, haven't we?
It simply gives us 3 metrics about the speed, the compliance with having the health assessment within a certain number of days. That sort of metric. It doesn't tell us about the general health of our corporate children. So I just wondered if we could have something a little bit more detailed at one of the future meetings. In other words, I'm raising it now because I'd kind of quite like it to go into the action log.
Right. Rashenda.
I think that would be something to be raised under the agenda plan, to look whether that could be covered in the future.
Thank you.
And Nicola's put her hand up as well. So Nicola, would you like to come in on that?
So thank you, Councillor. I think I was just going to say that there is under the new structure, just to remind members, there is a whole meeting that's dedicated to health regularly. So there will be a much more detailed health report, and we do have some additional information about different aspects of health as we go along. So hopefully that will be covered, but obviously we can look at the agenda plan as Rashenda's suggesting it when we get into that section of the work plan, and add in extra bits, but that is what we're planning to do.
Yeah, I think that's going to be useful, because obviously health has been an issue, hasn't it, Councillor Bradnam? I do take your point. I know where you're coming from, and one of the flexibilities that we're able to have, I think, as a subcommittee, I'm sure Rashenda will tell me I can't, is that we are able to have these interim reports and updates, which helps us, because obviously we're more operational than strategic. So thank you for that. Item number 3, petition and public questions. There are none, so we'll move on. So we move on to agenda item number 4, which is welcoming Anna Cullen, who's going to talk to us about the participation report.
Thank you very much, Councillor Avery. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope my video is working now. I apologise for having it switched off before. I'm having bandwidth issues this afternoon, so I apologise for that. I also apologise for the fact that I am a stand-in. I'm standing in for my colleague, Sika Smith, who's the lead improvement manager. She's off sick, so you are getting someone who knows about the work and has had a chat with the team about the work, but is not necessarily the original as advertised person. I don't know what would be helpful, Councillor Every. Do you want me to quickly run through the report, or are we open for questions, or what would suit the committee best?
Well, I would suggest that if everybody should have read the report, so you shouldn't need to go through it in detail. But I don't know whether you've got any highlights that you feel Sika would have wanted to have brought out at this meeting.
So the interesting thing is the meeting was written for the meeting that was due to take place in November, and it's really helpful to me to understand that that the committee is looking to readdress the informal meeting with young people, and how to do that under lockdown conditions, because I know that's something that's close to their heart, and that they appreciate appreciate the opportunity to feel heard and interact with you. So if the plans for that could move ahead, I'm sure it'd be very much welcome. So the interesting thing, of course, this report was written in November. It described some of the participation activities over the summer. There were some very successful virtual meetings. There was the summer program, and also the virtual arts fair, which I think went down very well. And the participation team worked extremely hard to put an online offer on to keep in touch with all young people in care and care leavers. And they did a lot of work around feedback with that cohort of young people to find out how they were managing with everything that was going on in the country, and I think it's fair to say that they were reflecting what I think we were all feeling, which was a certain amount of anxiety, a certain sense of isolation, and also concerns about how school was going to look, how their futures were going to look, and what would happen, how would things go back to normal. I think they were very keen to get back to face-to-face contact, and particularly at school as well. I think that was important for them, and so a lot was put in place to stay in touch and to encourage informal chats and keeping in touch conversations, and carrying out things like cooking along lessons for the young people who were cooking for themselves, or coming up with activities, things like sort of virtual guided tours of museums, stuff that people could do together but online, and but still feel part of something. I think it was important to the young people, crucially important to the young people, that they continue to have contact with their social workers and their personal advisors, and I think it was a feature of our interactions with young people and children and families generally, that the opportunity to show that sort of level of care and sort of holding in mind, not just doing a stat visit or carrying out a piece of work, but the how are you doing kind of conversations, made a tremendous difference, and made many of our service users feel cared for. And I think that's representative to a certain extent of how the country were looking after each other, but it was that particular reaching out that I think was important. So of course, the participation team and the Children in Care Council made all these adaptations and sort of moved towards an online relationship wherever possible and wherever safe. Lockdown started to ease, and we are now back where we were. So in some respects, the offer is there, and is now embedded, and certainly the participation team will be very much looking at using what has worked and developing more activities. I know there was a successful set of Christmas activities, including some face-to-face ones where it was safe and appropriate to do so, and I think the key thing is it's it was the message on page 12. It's the idea of the isolated but not alone, and it's just that key message to all of us to continue staying in touch and continue bearing our children and young people in mind and supporting them, and reaching out to them however they want to, and how suits them. And just briefly, there's always an update about Mind of My Own. We're looking to do a relaunch of that in the next couple of months, because for the young people and children that it works for and that like the platform and the interaction, it is useful and valuable, and it just gives us another little way of seeing what children and young people think generally, but also with respect to things like their care plans and their placements, and how that's going. So so yes, that really is the nutshell.
Okay, thank you very much, Anna. Questions for Anna? Anna.
Thank you.
Bradnam.
Thank you. I'm having a struggle getting around the technology today for some reason. Okay, so my attention was drawn in the report on what's good in life by age and what's not good in life by age on page 25. You're 19 in your internal report, but 25 in our agenda. And I noticed that the scores of what's good and what's bad were the same for my friends. And in other words, an equal number of people are not happy with what their friends are doing as are happy with what, their interactions with their friends. And it kind of brought me in mind of something I heard on the radio the other day, and we're all aware of, which is the amount of coercive and inappropriate behaviour that's happening online. And I just wondered, I imagine our foster parents are absolutely on the ball about parental controls on children's laptops and tablets and things, perhaps more so than other parents would be. But we know, don't we, that our cared for children are particularly vulnerable to being approached by other people. And I just wondered, do we have any information on how comfortable we are? And this isn't, sorry, it's not putting any blame on foster parents. It's just it's so difficult to monitor what children are doing. Do we have any feeling for how our looked after children are faring in this time when they're almost under assault from all this sort of inappropriate activity?
Right, who'd like to respond to that? I might throw Kevin in at the deep end here, actually, although he hasn't put his hand up. But Nicola has. So I don't want to put you in the hot seat, Kevin, but you might, if we can allow Nicola to respond, and then perhaps you'd like to come in if you don't mind. Nicola?
Thank you, Councillor Every. So thank you, Councillor Adam. I think, the issue around online exploitation of our young people, I'm afraid, is not a new one at all. So I know that there's been quite a lot in the press recently about, because so many more young people are needing to go online to access education, it's become more of a central issue again. We have very careful thinking and planning about our young people in care. All of our foster carers receive training and support around concerns around online exploitation. There's safeguarding board training around all of that. And we also evaluate each child individually. So there's obviously a significant difference between a 5-year-old, on a tablet playing some games, and then some of our young people who are accommodated perhaps because of issues around exploitation historically. And then there are special arrangements and very careful monitoring and planning made around those young people. So I think we are aware of it. We don't have necessarily specific details on an overall thing, but we do monitor each young person very carefully. And obviously if foster carers are concerned, but I'm sure Kevin will speak about this a bit, but obviously if a foster carer is concerned, they raise it with the child social worker or their supervising social worker, and then we would look at a plan and support around how we might be able to address that with the young person and offer the foster carer some additional support if needed. But I don't know if Kevin wants to come in there.
Hi everybody. Yeah, I think what I just wrote a couple of points down, and the first thing I wrote was training. So when you become a foster carer, we have a lot of training, and I think the web and all of the new technology is one of the key things that we look at as foster carers with the social workers. We have training on just general IT. In our monthly sort of 6 weekly supervisions, we talk about any difficulties surrounding things like that. And also we have a safety plan or sort of care plan I'm not sure I've got the right term there, but a safety plan per household, and within that, that covers all IT equipment that we have in the house. Idea being that we know who's using which piece at what time, and generally the general rule of thumb is that children leave devices downstairs and in a certain place to be charged at night and not using in rooms and things. So but I think it's generally quite well covered by the supervisions that we have quite often. So
that's really
a good point.
That's really reassuring. Thank you, both of you. I appreciate that.
It's good to have you here to get that perspective. We haven't always had that, Kevin, so thank you very much indeed. John was brilliant starting this up. Are you happy with those answers, Anna, or yeah?
That's I was sort of thinking about, sometimes we're conscious that our children have sometimes been going missing as well, and so actually what Kevin has said about the monitoring of devices and having them downstairs, I think is very, very sensible. So thank you. I had a feeling our corporate parents would be, our foster carers would be actually more alert to this than some other parents, perhaps.
Probably right, yes. Thank you. So, Councillor Hay.
Yes. First of all, I'd like to congratulate our officers on the work they've been doing in these difficult times, ensuring that they keep in touch with children. I was very impressed with this report and the feedback that came from some of the children, in particular from the care leavers, because sometimes I think care leavers are overlooked. All of a sudden, they're pushed out into the big bad world, or this is what people think. But it's quite obvious to me that within Cambridgeshire, we don't do that. But it is nice to hear their views, and if we incorporate them into practice going forward. I must say I was very, very impressed by the one of the winners in the newsletters, What I Am Like as a Mirror. I found that very insightful. And I don't know how old the child was that did that, but I commend them on it. And I would hope going forward that this art exhibition idea, virtual art exhibition, could be kept up even after COVID, because I think it is a good tool to engage with children and to show that we appreciate the work they're doing and showcase it to others.
Thank you, Councillor Hay. I'm glad you mentioned the care leavers, because if you hadn't, I would have done that. And one of the things which has been an issue perhaps in the past was participating with those care leavers. And I don't know whether you wanted to make a comment. Have care leavers come into the fold because of COVID, or have they become more hard to reach? Or I know you've done your newsletters just gone out, which is brilliant. I just wondered, how the care leavers are faring.
I think that actually Fiona and Myra might be better placed to deal with that than myself. I do know that for the participation team, the reaching out to care leavers and talking to the care leaving teams, the effort to stay in touch, as often as the young person wanted, and establishing that dialogue was hugely important over the beginning of lockdown. And I think it's one of those things that when life started to get back to normal a bit more, it wasn't so necessary to them. But it's about that relationship with that care leaver and what they need, and being attuned to that. So I think the reaching out and sort of saying and starting to be in touch and just keeping that informal stuff, I think that went a really long way, and I think there's valuable lessons for all of our practice going forward. But certainly in terms of I don't know whether Fiona and Myra have anything else to add for that. Actually, I mean, we've got Joe Gilbert here. Sorry to put you on the spot, Joe, but you're a PA, and you've done some amazing work during lockdown. You might have something to add here.
Thanks. Yeah, I think when it comes to engagement, I think most from what I've heard, that actually digital engagement suited a lot of our young people more. And it's kind of been able to be within their own terms a lot more. So I think that some of our personal advisors have managed to start connecting to some of the care leavers that they were struggling to connect to before, because they don't have to go out and meet them in a certain place and be there for name badge, and actually someone can just log on to their phone or their computer, and this has worked quite well for a lot of our young people.
Oh, Okay, thank you very much, Joe. I've got no other blue hands. So if there are no more questions, I'd just like to thank you, Anna, for coming along and stepping into the breach. And could you pass on our best wishes to Sika for a speedy recovery? I hope she'll be fine soon. Thank you very much.
I absolutely will. Thank you.
So, councillors, we've been asked to comment or provide feedback on the range of consultation events and activities the participation service provide for children in care and care leavers. So I think we've done that. So we could move on to item 5, which is our report from the Cambridgeshire Foster Carers Association. And I'm going to ask Fiona Vandenhout, which is Fiona, Head of Service for Fostering, to introduce the report from an officer's perspective, and then we'll go over to Kevin, who's the new chair of the CFCA. Fiona.
Thank you, Councillor Every. So we have, as the CFCA and Fostering Service, in collaboration with the virtual school, submitted the survey. It was an education review survey asking foster carers for their views and comments on their experiences of working with schools, the support for children in care who have additional educational needs, the support foster carers receive from the virtual school, and their experience of being involved with the personal education plan or PEP process. I believe we feel, Kevin, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that we actually had quite a good response from foster carers. 38 foster carers responded, and Kevin has very helpfully put together the survey outcomes in the appendix within the report that I submitted. Shall I pass you over to Kevin to talk through the highlights from the survey? Kevin?
Okay, yeah, thank you, Fiona. Yeah, so I worked with Kim Green and Claire as well, Hines from Virtual School, to put together a survey that we could put out to foster carers just to really get a feel for how they were working with virtual school and education and what was sort of going well and what we needed to look at. We had it was the second survey that we'd done as the CFCA, and it was probably the best turnout. We had more than this one. And it was very positive, really, in the main. I think I won't go through the whole report, but just to highlight a couple of the strengths and areas for development and what, since this report, what we've kind of discussed to do. It was generally felt that a good number of schools understand the needs of children and young people in care, and that the STEPS approach to behaviour management is working quite well. The virtual school have done offering training on to give schools sort of trauma-informed training, which has been very well received alongside of that. Generally, schools have good communication with carers. I think, like anything, it varies, but in the main, it was quite positive. The virtual school have provided good support for carers during lockdown. And again, that was a bit mixed, and I think that lots of people were saying there was good support, and other people weren't sure where the support, where they could get support from, or whether they should or not. So that's something that we've it's gone into both sections there. There's a new model the virtual school are working now, is instead of the kind of going along or trying to go along to every single child's PEP, the model of kind of training the schools and working with the schools, and then the foster carers doing the PEPs, has given them a lot more focus to work sort of behind the scenes in training schools to help all children. And I think that's worked quite well, and it's kind of reflective of the neighbouring counties as well. And that's something that we're going to be feeding back with foster carers Thursday. It's about managing sort of expectations of what the virtual school's going to do and how we're going to work together. Some of the key things really that were more areas for development were with the PEP paperwork. So each child has a personal educational plan review every term, and that paperwork needs to be sent through to the foster carers. That's something that's a bit tricky because it has to go through virtual school, also goes through the school and the social workers, and it's something that takes a period of time to get through to foster carers sometimes, and that's an area that's going to be looked at to see if we can speed that up says it's not down to the child's social worker to do it, maybe. Some comments were made about looking at the child's individual potential rather than just looking at a child from an age-related expectations, and trying to utilise the PEPs to really look at what the child was capable of, and helping them to achieve their real potential. So that's something that's a sort of talking point. And the other key thing was the educational healthcare plans that for children in care, sometimes they take quite a while, and that's something that I raised with the virtual school, and Kim was explaining to me that actually it's something we can talk to schools about making the assessment quicker for children, so it doesn't have to sort of be one assessment per term. It can be sometimes speeded up, and then that going into the start team for approval. So there's some really good outcomes from it, and the four key areas were really the swifter access to PEPs, the CFCA to help with raising the awareness of the virtual school to carers, and in conjunction with Fiona and the team for looking at our training for carers, and again in conjunction with virtual school. That was really sort of point 2 and 3. We're thinking about doing some question and answer sessions with the virtual school, so instead of just sort of relying on a survey, like a Q&A interview, and then providing carers with information, so as then we can go back and ask specific questions from that. And then tying in with the trauma-informed kind of approach, looking at the training that's offered to the schools, so as the carers, when they're going to a PEP, they can feel maybe more empowered to know how schools are managing things, and what the how the virtual school are suggesting, in training to be trauma-informed, so as carers can feel more sort of we're all singing from the same hymn sheet at home and from school, to make it more joined up. I'm sure Claire will cover off. I had a meeting with Kim this morning, and there's a few points that we've discussed. I'm sure Claire will add into everything that I've said. So I think that probably covers the main bulk of our findings.
Thank you very much. It was really useful to us to read this. I have to say, you're right. It's a really good survey, and the results, are encouraging. And to have this kind of information and this link and the synergy between different parts of the service to supporting our children is really important for us. Claire, did you want to come in and say anything, or do you just want to talk about these things when you do your own school report?
No, I'm happy to make a comment. I think, first of all, thank you very much to Kevin, because I think he has covered it all beautifully. And so I don't think there's a huge amount more to add from what Kevin has shared with you. But I think the key things for us are really enhancing that relationship that we've got, particularly with Kevin and with social carers more generally, so that we can make sure that we are, I think, a key part of it is the communication. I think, there are some aspects of it where it's about, it's not that things aren't happening, but it's about how that's communicated. I think I can understand from carers' perspective, we're no longer attending PEPs, and therefore we have become more invisible to them. So I think it's really about making sure that we're communicating effectively with them what it is we are doing, and that we're really enhancing the training and things that we're offering to carers, so that they feel like they're fully supported and know when to come to us and how we can support them. So I think there's definitely some work to do around that. The work around PEPs is key. We have already moved forward a little bit with that. So I've had a meeting with Welfare Call, who are our PEP provider, and they have said that within 2 weeks they will set up a working group for us. So this has happened since you've met with Kim this afternoon, Kevin. So Kim won't have shared this with you, but that we are hoping that Kevin and a group of foster carers can work with us as the virtual school and Welfare Call as our PEP provider to look at how we get that right, and how we can enable access to our carers. So it's not going to be a quick solution, because it isn't just the case of a click of a button. It's a process that needs to be worked through. But we will be able to work towards that, and we'll be able to keep communicating with foster carers the work that's going on, and where we're hoping to get to with it in the near future. So I think there's that side of it. I think think the other thing that we have done is that within our team, we have Kim now, who Kevin has mentioned, who is a direct link between our service and foster carers. And Kim, we have been able to free up some additional time for Kim, so that this can really be an area of focus for her, and she can work quite intensively over the next few weeks to really try to move things forward, so that we really do get some quick wins, and also obviously look at the longer term picture and how we can move it forward beyond these next few weeks. So yeah, I think Kevin, I think you've probably covered everything else.
Yeah, I just wanted, before I go to Fiona, who's got her blue hand up, was just that, Kevin, you made a comment that maybe some foster carers didn't know where to go to or during lockdown, or were concerned about what they had to do. Is that the individual school communication, or is it some the bigger, or how does that
No,
work?
I think what I think, yeah, no, I think what I meant by that was whether or not they. So the schools have obviously been talking with all of the families and social care, and I think Virtual School have got a lot of resources on their website, and they've got a lot of resources available. I think just where Claire was just saying there, I think it was just more a case of foster carers being signposted into those things, and raising that awareness that the Virtual School's there to help as well. Because as a foster carer, we have so many different avenues that we can go for support. I mean, the child social worker, our social worker, we can talk to an IRO, we can talk to a guardian, we talk to the school managers, and then you kind of say, oh, we've got the Virtual School as well. And actually, no, I think that's what I meant was just that, you know, having those direct channels in. But I think as well with Kim, I've worked quite a lot with Kim now over the last couple of months, and having sort of a direct person that's responsible for foster care communication as well is going to really help. I think that's increased it. So we've just agreed to send a few bits of sort of, not, I wouldn't say marketing, but information out to carers regularly, especially during the lockdown, so as they can be more aware of what the Virtual School can offer and what they can help with, and you know, an additional support arm really. That's
brilliant. Thank you, Kevin. Fiona, come back on that.
Thank you, Councillor Every. I was just going to really reiterate exactly what Kevin and Claire have already said around communication being really key. So the fostering service will work closely with the CFCA and with the Virtual School around the communication we send to all our foster carers, including those who aren't aligned with the CFCA, to ensure that the right communication is being received in the right way. And I think that's really key. So we'll be working very closely with Tony, who's our marketing officer, to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. So I can throw it open to our councillors. Any questions? Anna, Councillor Bradnam.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to check. We've got some data on question B and C, and I think Mr. Arrowsmith pointed out that there's a lot of training going on, because I'm slightly worried to see on page, under question B, that's page 35 of our report, there's quite, you know, not a big clump, but a small clump of people saying that in each of those education scenarios, the early years nursery, school A and school B, that there was a small proportion of people saying there was little or no understanding of the needs of traumatized children, which I'm hoping. So the question is, what are we doing to address that? And are there ways of that we're approaching the schools to help them to understand a bit better? And the other thing was, and you've raised it before, Chairman, the business about communication, and that there was this small clump at question C, one or two people who said they'd been communicated with poorly, although the majority at school A had said they had good communication from school A. So I just wondered if we can, that's presumably just either about one child or maybe one foster carer has not been communicated with well on one occasion or something like that. I wonder if I could just have some interpretation there.
Claire.
So just to feedback in terms of the training for schools, so that we do have an extensive training program for schools that we offer at no charge. So we do offer training around trauma-informed schools. We do offer training around FASD. We offer training around unaccompanied asylum-seeking minors. There's a whole host. We offer training for designated teachers on their role, for the needs of children previously in care. So there is a big training offer out there, and generally speaking, our schools are very complimentary about it and about the impact that it has. And we have just recently, over the last year, we have purchased virtual reality headsets, which will provide an additional element to our training moving forward, where it enables us to be able to support the person participating in the training to understand much more about the lived experience of the child. It goes through this, one of the sections is the child in the womb, in an environment where there is domestic violence and alcohol being consumed, and it helps the person participating to just begin to put themselves in the shoes of that unborn baby, and it goes right through. It goes through children, and it shows things like for a child in school, then it goes through and it shows both a trauma-informed response to the needs that child is presenting with, and then it also shows a more traditional response to the behaviours the child's presenting with, and helps the educational professionals to understand the difference between those. And because it's the same characters that they use right from being the unborn child right the way through, it helps even for secondary school teachers to understand actually about the impact of those early experiences. So we have invested in those. We were ready to roll out face-to-face training with those. Obviously, COVID and lockdown prevented that. We went into lockdown not long after we'd had the training on them. But what we have been able to do is use this period to be able to re-look at all of our training and look at the best ways of embedding them within the training that we already offer. So when we can go back to face-to-face training, we've got that offer ready for our schools. What we have also done is there are some 2D videos, which obviously don't have quite the same impact because it's not quite so immersive. But what we have done is we've looked to incorporate those into some of our webinars that we are delivering currently, as we can't do face-to-face training. And they are, we have sessions for primary, secondary, and early years, which are being rolled out over this next month, and they are fully, every place on them has been snapped up by our schools. And I think the beauty of the online training, the virtual training, does mean that it is open to our schools no matter where our children are placed. So if we've got schools down in Cornwall, they can also access that training, which obviously they wouldn't come for our face-to-face training.
That's great. Can I come back with one follow-up? So that sounds great, and I'm really encouraged that you've made online training available, because clearly at the moment that's really important. But also, do you have any estimate? I mean, schools are absolutely hard pressed at the moment, and I find it hard to imagine that any teachers have actually got time to do any training when they're struggling to keep children in separate bubbles and isolated, and delivering online training as well as trying to teach children in school of key workers. So I just suppose it's not a question to be answered now, but it's just I hope that we're making it as easy as possible for them to take part. It sounds like you are, because people snap it up. So that's great, because I just think teachers need all the help that they can get at the moment, because it's just so difficult to even just be a teacher, let alone anything else. So
yeah,
okay,
I can just respond a little bit to that, if that's okay. So the training that we have offered around trauma and attachment is a full hour or a couple of hours, because we obviously that isn't something that can be done very in a short chunk. But beyond that, the rest of the webinars that we have developed, we have tried to do them in sort of 15-minute slots, because we're aware of how busy all of our designated teachers are. And what we have done is we've provided the key content with then additional links, so that should they want further information, or should they, want to then, look at information on our website, or a link to a webinar that, an outside agency have done that is just particularly good, they're signposted to those to enable them to do it. And what we found is that by having them pre-recorded, it enables our designated teachers to be able to view them at the time that's convenient to them, which during the current, I mean, obviously anyway for our teachers when they've all got different teaching commitments is helpful, but particularly at the moment with the additional pressures that they're under. As part of I've been doing a master's in the education of care experienced children, and as part of my action research, one of the things that I have done is been looking at a webinar, and we've the participants in that, we've taken the feedback from them, which has informed what we have been doing around, you know, the length of time for it, and it being pre-recorded, etc., etc.
Good, lovely. Thank you very much.
Well done. I'm impressed that you've got time to do that as well, Claire, if I may say. And I was thinking, how long ago was it when we had the designated teachers for the first time in a room in Huntingdon? Was that just a year ago?
It was a year last June.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I really look forward to the day when we can all come back again and just mull over what happened over this last year, because we certainly didn't realise when you changed the approach that to the way you're working now, that we would have had these additional challenges to deal with. So very well done to the virtual school, and thank you so much for the work that you've done, the association, because this is a substantial piece of work. And I was just going to ask whether, because you're obviously able to do this really well and drill down, which is incredibly useful for us as counsellors, I have to say, whether or not you have plans for other such surveys with other areas of interest that obviously you have as foster carers?
Yeah, I think we do, and that's something that I've been talking to Fiona about, maybe not just sticking to surveys, and that's where we come out with the question and answer session. So and then again, we can still produce it into a bit of a report, but I think we're going to try to do something along these lines for the corporate parenting subcommittee on each subject. That's the plan. So yeah, we hope to. And I think what I saw just listening to Councillor Brandham there and Claire Hynes, where I think with the foster carers becoming more aware of the virtual school, that can really help to join up between foster carers and the schools. So if they're, I mean, the question about the schools having little or lack of understanding of traumatized children in the report, I think that's sort of, I've just added up, it's about eight comments, so that's 8 children. So I think with the virtual school working with foster carers more, that's going to really bridge that gap, is what I wanted to say, really. I think, and encourage the schools, so helping them to join up in the approach of what we might be doing at home that's working for us, and feeling that we can actually talk to the schools directly about that as well. So us receiving some of the training that or sort of snippets of the training that the schools are having will help to kind of fill that circle up, really. So.
Well, there's some certain advantages from lockdown. I think we've changed.
Yeah,
we've worked. Not that, but that's what we were intended to do. So thank you very much. Any more questions from any councillors? If not, I have to read out that what we've been asked to do, and I think 12 months ago we wouldn't have been in a position to be able to make these comments and to listen to this kind of research. So it's great, the work that you've all done collaboratively. So we note the comments from foster carers in regards to their views and experiences of the education provided to the children in care they look after. Note the comments for foster carers in regards to their interactions with and support from the virtual school, and note the continuing collaborative work from Children's Services, foster carers and the virtual school to improve educational outcomes for children in care. And I think this is just a great first step. It's really, really good. Fantastic outing, if I may say so, Kevin. Thank you. So we move on to Claire's own report. And so this is item 6, which is the virtual school report, which is going to be introduced by Claire, who's the head teacher. I also want to welcome John Jordan-Hills, because we haven't seen you before, John, so that's, I don't think. And he's the virtual school's post-16 business manager, responsible also for asylum seekers. Is that right? That's right. Okay. So Claire.
Okay, so obviously since this report was written, we've gone into a further period of lockdown within schools and post-16 settings and providers. So they are now only open to vulnerable children and critical workers. So to supplement what's been written in the report, I'm just now going to share with you our virtual school response since this time. So that our first priority was around liaising with our Director of Education and also our colleagues within social care to confirm what advice it would be that we would be sharing with our schools, with our carers and with our social workers regarding school attendance. And that's now been communicated out to all relevant parties. In line with the previous lockdown, it was agreed that children in care are not a homogenous group and that the decision about what's right for each child needs to be made according to each child's individual circumstances and the circumstances of the family. It was further agreed that the decision would need to be made with discussion between the foster carer and the social worker, with the social worker then having further discussion with their team manager. In terms of our support as a virtual school, we're there to, if any of the social workers wanted to have a conversation with us, we're available to do that. And then our role really is around, if there were any then challenges around actually gaining access to school, or around access to remote education, that we're there then to support. So in terms of things like IT access and ensuring that young people and children have access to appropriate equipment and internet access. So in addition to that, we have reminded our carers, education settings and social workers about the education support line, which we set up last time when COVID first hit. And that's a service that's run by the educational psychologists within the virtual school, alongside social care clinicians and an EP from the SEND services. And that is available to any of those partners to contact that number, that email address, should they need any support in just thinking through a specific situation or circumstance, and that two people will then be in contact with them to help them think that through with a trauma-informed response to that need. We've reviewed our PEP and we have moved back to a COVID template for this period of lockdown. It includes a section for designated teachers to update weekly, which provides us with details of whether the child is accessing remote learning, on-site provision or blended learning, and also the level of engagement that their child or young person is having within that package. And that then enables us to respond, so that if we're getting through on a weekly basis, you know, on that week that the child is stopping to engage with the learning that is on offer of them, that then prompts our action to make contact with the school, the care and the social worker, and look at what the challenges are and how we might be able to support around that. Internally, we have we looked at the work within the virtual school, because we're very, very conscious. Obviously, we want to make sure that we are giving the right support to all of those that need it, the children, the schools, the education settings, carers and social workers. But what we're also very conscious of is that this is obviously going on for a prolonged period of time, and that we don't want the development of our service as a whole not to continue to move forward. And so what we've done is we have given specific members of our team responsibility to really lead on the actions we need around COVID, which will then free up some of the members of our team to focus on some of the areas that we want to do in terms of development. One of those being Kim Green with the foster carers and the work that she's then able to really push that forward for us over the coming weeks. So that's in terms of the COVID. The next section of the report looks at, just also to share with you, so our headline data for this first week of this lockdown is that we have about 36% of our children that have attended sessions in school over that first week. And that compares with 5% of children, all children attending school. And it compares with where we were at about 33% of our children attending during the last lockdown period, towards the end of that lockdown period. You will have read within the report that in terms of attainment and progress conversations, they were due to take place with schools in January. The feasibility of those conversations has been reviewed on an individual basis, and where it's appropriate, if the child is attending education, if it's felt that actually we are able to continue to have that conversation with school and to continue to look at additional support for that young person to drive forward attainment and progress, that will still happen, but that will be judged on an individual basis as to how appropriate that is. So the next section of the report that we were asked to provide is on attainment and progress. So just to reiterate that the figures from last year, previous years have been provided, but this is for the guidance is very, very clear that we shouldn't be making comparisons, looking at previous year's data in comparison to this last year's data, because of the circumstances around COVID. There were no assessments at primary, and we're aware that we are going to be in a similar position over this next period, over this next year. We are making sure that we are collecting our internal data, so our term-on-term data from schools in our PEP, and we have really strengthened our processes around how we're then tracking that attainment data and how we will be able to use that. And that's something that we were looking to develop anyway as a virtual school, but has become even more important because of the challenges at the moment around attainment and progress and collection of data. We have still asked schools to provide us with attainment and progress data this term. We're aware that exactly what they're going to be able to provide will vary according to the offer that the young person child has had, but we've asked them to do the very best to provide us with as much information as they can around how the children are getting on. The final part of the report that I was asked to prepare is on our unaccompanied asylum seeking minors. And I'd just like to take the opportunity to introduce John Jordan Hills to you, who's very kindly agreed to join me in this meeting today. John is one of our post-16 advisors, and he's also, over the last few years, he has led on our developments over UASCs. And that includes the development of the holiday provision, which is referred to within the report, and the homework club that have been referenced. So John has done an awful lot of that. He has just handed it over, but he has really led and moved forward the provision that we've been able to offer to our young people over the previous years.
Thank you, Claire. John.
I don't think I helped Claire write the report, so there isn't sort of so much that I want to add. I'm kind of here to answer any questions that you might have. Okay. So I suppose we can go to that.
Well, we've never had a you to ask questions for before, so that's really good. So in that case, if has anybody got any questions? Adela, Councillor Costello.
Yeah, hi, sorry. It's not a question. I just wanted to let the subcommittee know that I spent a couple of mornings with Claire and various other members of her team, and we were involved in the quality assurance process of the children's PEPs. And I was really impressed with the sort of commitment and professionalism of everyone there who attended, including myself. And I also I did go and look at some of the webinars in order to prepare myself for assisting, and they are excellent, and anyone can go and visit them on YouTube. And you know, some of the committee members might be interested in going there, but yeah, it was really good, and the team are doing, the virtual school are doing an excellent job. All I wanted to say.
Thank you. Any more questions? Because I'm going to ask John a question. So I'll ask John a question, because this morphs seamlessly into the local offer, which we're going to do, because obviously we're going to pick up the post-18 picture, and this is why we wanted to do themes like this. And I thank the officers for putting it together like this, because it does give us a real picture of a child's journey, and for post-16, but also some of our asylum seekers, because for many of the for those youngsters, they are going to come into school to have a slightly different diet of curriculum than the youngsters that are there. And I just wondered how you managed to assimilate those post-16 into the programme, because obviously whatever time they arrive, it's a very short period of time before they're sort of into the care leavers box. And so I just wondered if you could outline some of the things that you do in order to help their transition and their potential.
Yes, certainly. So the majority of our asylum seekers do arrive at the age of about 16. So I think at the moment we've got about 8 or 9 that are accessing school, so the statutory school age. So out of the 80 that we have, you know, we're talking about 70 that sit in post-16. So we have built amazing links with the colleges, who sort of tend to be the main providers of ESOL courses. And unfortunately, the majority of ours aren't quite at the language level to be able to access vocational courses yet. So they're kind of going through the process of doing some English courses to get to the level, particularly with their reading and writing, so that they can then move on to access vocational courses later on. And I'm very happy with what the colleges are providing in terms of this. We've also working with a local provider called Beats Learning. I'm sure that name comes up quite often, but they've got a fantastic ESOL offer both in Cambridge and Peterborough. And they have a bit more flexibility than the colleges. So with colleges, once their numbers are full, particularly around sort of after October half term, sometimes they can't take young people onto a course anymore, as is the normal way with any course in college. Whereas Beats has the flexibility to take them at any time of the year. So when we've got young asylum seekers arriving in March, or I don't know, even sort of June or July, close to the end of term, Beats Learning will actually take them on and start them on the process ready for September to feed back into college and a proper ESOL course. Myself and Rebecca McCallum, who I can see is also on the call, we work very, very closely for that transition for all of, as I said, I deal with over 90 post-16 learners. So we work very closely to kind of hand over between us, and we kind of, there's a bit of an overlap to make sure that we're handing over appropriately. And we do that for the asylum seekers as well.
Thank you. We're going to ask another question. We're going to get our Councillor Machini to come in first.
Thank you. This just came to me while you were talking just now, because I'm reminded of, I mean, it's all excellent and it's all extremely good to hear. I'm reminded of some of the services that I know. I'm going to say the districts because I don't know very well. I mean, what I know is what my district, i.e. Cambridge City, is doing with asylum seekers which are not unaccompanied. So they are their responsibility, and they have a lot of these stuff going on in terms of having to provide basic services to get these children up to the level where they can receive, you know, language, psychology, counseling, these kinds of things. And I was just wondering, out of personal curiosity, number one, how much do you talk to each other, providers of these services, to related categories of users, which we might want to call them, and how much are you learning from each other? I'm assuming a decent amount. And B, in terms of unaccompanied asylum seekers that are under 16, is there a big difference in terms of the services they require because they're unaccompanied from their accompanied counterparts? I would be very curious to hear that. Other than that, thank you. That was excellent.
No, that's fine. So I think to your first point, sort of point A, I would say that we always connect our designated teachers and our schools through our networking anyway, but particularly with the DTs and the teachers that are working with unaccompanied asylum seekers, or asylum seekers that aren't unaccompanied, through our networking and through sort of the meetings that we have, they have that opportunity to discuss with each other. So all the providers that we have, so we've had young people in schools within the city as well as the college, so they can kind of talk to each other and bounce ideas that might be slightly different, sort of because of the age groups that they're dealing with and the young people they're dealing with. I'd also like to say that we work quite closely with the Cambridge Refugee Resettlement Campaign, who is sort of one of the main providers of support for asylum seekers within the city, certainly. And Adrian Matthews from there has really sort of helped me with some of the training that I've been delivering to our teachers and to our schools. He's come along to our training and actually delivered the legal aspect, because I think that's his background, his history is kind of in the legalities of the visa process. So he's been a really key link that we've had to make sure that our information is matching the information that other asylum seekers are receiving from other agencies.
Okay, Alicia? Yep. I've just got a couple of things which I would like to ask. I don't see any other blue hands, but if I may, and they're not necessarily related. I was going to ask Claire. Obviously, we're not going to do comparisons because we're just not dealing like with like, but we are aware that we are always concerned about the attainment of our youngsters who are experiencing care, and I just wondered. I know we're national average, and you've done really well to get there, but that's not going to be good enough for you, and we want obviously to improve on that, and we totally applaud that. But in your estimation, are our youngsters this year who had to deal with COVID in these circumstances, are they now worse off than some of our many of our youngsters who've not been in that position? I'm just concerned about whether the gap is going to widen, even if we're not comparing, for those youngsters' life chances in terms of qualifications because of COVID. And I know you've tried desperately hard not to make that happen, but I just wondered what outcomes you might be expecting.
I think it's really, really difficult at the moment because obviously we're still in the middle of it all. So it's very difficult. We're not really in a period of recovery. We're smack bang in the middle of the pandemic still. And I think that, we'd obviously hoped to be in a period of recovery now, and we'd hoped to be able to really intensify what is available to our children and young people, to really try and make sure that we're doing everything we can to minimize that gap. And it's really frustrating because we were ready, we were poised to go into schools to have these conversations, to really try and look at what we could do to push attainment and progress forward over this next term. We'd already had pupil progress meetings internally within the virtual school, and we were ready to go and to begin that work with our schools and settings. And obviously this has impacted on our ability to do that. In terms of our year 11s last year and what they've gone on to do, John is one of our post-16 advisors, and they did both of our post-16 advisors look very, very carefully at where, obviously where the children were at the end of year 11, and then their access on to the right course. And I don't think, John, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, but we've not. I think that they've all been able to go on and access the courses that they would have wanted to, or I think, haven't they? And obviously, I think nationally the results that everybody's seen, every virtual school has seen, you'll see they have increased, and that's I think partly by the nature of it being one, teacher assessment, but two, obviously if they were graded when they'd originally looked at the assessments, if they had been graded at a level. And then the teachers' assessments were used for any children that were lower than that when the government realised that it just wasn't working, the algorithms weren't working, and they were going to change it. So, there will have been some children whose teacher assessments might have been slightly lower. They kept that grade that had come through from the algorithm. So we know that across the country, GCSE grades are higher this year, but I don't think it's actually prevented any of our children or young people going on to access the appropriate next steps for them.
Yeah, thank you. John doesn't want to say something because he's pushed his blue hand up. So
I was trying to be polite. I just wanted to add to what Claire was saying in terms of the work that has been going on sort of with our children moving to virtual learning. There are quite a lot of our young people who suffer from anxiety and struggle to be in the school environment. And what we have actually seen is that this sort of COVID period and this kind of remote learning has been a time for them to flourish. And I've got a few sort of personal cases on my caseload where they were really struggling to be in college and kind of deal with the college environment, but in the safety of their own bubble and working from home, they've been able to really progress and do quite well on their courses. The other thing I wanted to mention also was the work that we've been doing, and again, in collaboration with Joe Gilbert and Rebecca McCullum, in terms of the sort of the virtual sort of computers and laptops and iPads in order to actually access the remote learning. And that's really been something that we've pushed. And I think nearly all our young people now have devices, and we're still working to make sure that they've also got Wi-Fi access and things like that, so they are not at a disadvantage at this time.
That's absolutely brilliant. So I'm sure Joe and Rebecca will tell us their good story in a minute, and that's great. But just before we just move into that, just one more question I'd like to ask. Joe and I are involved with some research that's been that's happening regarding care leavers, and some of the things that are coming out of that research are the lack of employability skills and knowledge in terms of careers, opportunities, and financial expertise, i.e. how do you do a budget, etc. And I wonder, and I think our care leavers are at a disadvantage over that, because when they're 18 they may be leaving their foster carers and so on. So are there any plans for you, John, now you're the post-16, to actually, because this picks up what Kevin was saying about educating the whole child rather than just for the examination results, and giving those youngsters between 16 and 18 those employability skill understanding, careers options from perhaps a different baseline, but also, you know, how on earth do you manage budgets and your life when your life is going to change dramatically at 18? And what we're really looking for is something, I know it's a hard thing to ask, but it's a through progression to provide our youngsters post 18 with the best possible life chances.
Sorry, I'm smiling, and so is Claire, because the reason I've just handed over the UASC sort of development side of things to another colleague in the team is because I'm actually setting up what we're calling the Aspirations Project.
Yes.
And so what we're looking at is that careers advice and guidance offer that's going into our schools, not just at my stage at post-16, we're going right the way back to Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2. We're hoping to sort of develop, so if a lot of the schools are buying in services at the moment, so we're going to look at the services that they're actually accessing and see if we can increase that, whether it's appropriate, are they getting the right stuff? So your example of, are they learning how to budget and finance and things like that, you know, employability skills is huge, and that's soft skills in terms of sort of communication and confidence, as well as the skills that they would need for the career or the subject that they're looking at. We've just hired Sarah Jo Jefford, who some of you may know from Cambridge Regional College.
Yes. Sarah?
Yes.
Is she at the college oh, Joe. Sorry. We have a problem. Okay, carry on.
So Sarah Jo Jefford is joining our team, and she's going to actually lead this aspirational project with me. She's going to have, that's going to be her full-time job. So she's going to have the time to really look into this, do a lot of the networking, get the businesses, the agencies, the careers advice guidance companies involved and into our schools and into our young people's lives. We've also recently connected with the Regions of Learning that is going on from sort of Michelle Lord and the Libraries Project. And they've developed a fantastic app. They've trialed it with about 700 young people in our county so far. And they're looking to extend this. And Rebecca McCallum and myself are making sure that the care leavers and the looked after children are in the next phase of this app development, and it's fantastic. We're hoping that it's going to be for everybody, so it'll be their peers. They won't be kind of identified as different, so everyone will have this. But this app will have all the information at different ages about clubs, activities, work experience, opportunities that they can do to really kind of boost their CV outside of what they're learning in school. And they're going to have badges on this app that they will earn every time that they develop a skill. So going back to these soft skills. So if they participate in an activity or they attend a club and they develop confidence, communication, for example, they will earn badges on their profile to prove that they have done this. And the idea is with this app that it will link into CV sort of platforms such as LinkedIn and and things like that. So it'll kind of build their CV as they go along throughout their journey.
That's absolutely brilliant. And the reason why I squealed is because Joe was running our business mentoring project at CRC. So I'm just wondering what impact that's going to have. I'll have a discussion with Joe outside the meeting.
She has asked if she can still be involved with that.
Well, as long as it's joined up, that's fine. So Anna actually has put up her hand now. So Anna, sorry, I feel as if I've hogged that, but it was just something that Joe and I were talking about today, which I just wanted to catch up with. Anna.
Thank you, Liz. But do you know what it is? That you know how it is. You have a thing in your mind, and it's just gone straight out of my mind again. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to. I'll have to defer on that because what I was going to ask has gone. I'm sorry. Oh, I know what it was. It was to do with no, leave it, and I'll come back another time if I may.
Just wave at me if you wanted to.
Sorry, my mind's gone blank.
There aren't any other blue hands. I really feel we've drilled down in. There's what we've been asked to do as councillors is to note the content of the report, which thank you for this, but to raise any queries with the lead officer. And I think we can all say that we've done that. It's been really, really interesting. Thank you very much.
Sorry. Absolutely, I've remembered the thing. Sorry, what it was. Sorry to be a bit dim. John, in your report, you pointed out that a lot of children have actually done better under COVID conditions because they can work quietly from home rather than being in school. And something that I have encountered is, of course, children don't exist on their own. They exist with parents. And if just outside children in care, what I'm aware of is that some children have been nervous about going to school for fear of bringing COVID back to their parents who might be vulnerable medically. And so actually I'm seeing it outside the children in care. There are a lot of children who actually get on, they're not bullied, they're not distracted, they're not put under pressure. They just get on with the work in the way they want to. And so it doesn't surprise me that you say that our children in care are similarly, some of them are actually preferring working from home. Having said that, what I'm aware of is that there's that is not without a cost in their social interaction skills. And I'm just wondering, there's the other end of that seesaw, isn't there? To make sure that they do continue to interact with colleagues and contemporaries. And I'm just wondering, are you feeling that you're able to handle that as well?
I think the schools and colleges are doing part of that work in terms of the remote learning that they are doing is when it's on Teams and it's on Google Classrooms, they're still like we are now, they're sat in a group and they are, albeit remotely via a camera, they are kind of still having to learn how to take their turn and put their hand up when they want to ask a question and all those types of skills. So there is a social element still going on through the remote learning, I would say. I don't know if Claire wants to add anything else at all.
Yeah, just to say that I think that schools learnt an awful lot through the first period of lockdown, and I think that where that some of the remote learning was developing during the first lockdown, I think that now schools are very well equipped, and we're certainly finding there's a lot more of a balance between live lessons and remote learning and quizzes and bringing things back to to teachers and different ways of being able to manage that. I think that the offer that we're seeing from schools is much more substantial, and obviously the DfE guidance is that it needs to be much more substantial, but it feels like there's a much better offer out there for our children and young people this time around. And as John said, that really does support in terms of making sure that there is that level of social engagement. Sometimes they are doing things like a tutorial with the form tutor where it is just a bit of a social quiz, and they're doing that in small groups so that it's not just about the academic learning. I think it's beyond that in terms of the offer that's coming through.
Right.
And just to if it's okay, just to add to what John was saying before about the new role that we've been able to put in post, we did apply for a grant through the What Works for Children with a Social Worker, and unfortunately that was unsuccessful. but we were very passionate about this and really feel that it's an incredibly important aspect of our work, and that we want to make sure that this does start right through from Key Stage 1, and that that it's a very sort of gradual offer with both sort of universal provision, then some targeted and more intense. We have used some of our retained Pupil Premium Plus funding to be able to put in place this post. It is at the moment a temporary post. It's until the end of the summer, because obviously what we need to do is to look at the impact of this post and what we're able to achieve with it. And should it be successful, and should we be in a position financially where we can afford to continue it, then we would most definitely be looking to do that. But at the moment, it's fixed term until the summer.
Well, keep us in touch with that, because that's really interesting. And I was going to finish this item, but Anne would like to have a word. Councillor.
Yeah, I mean, so on that matter of distance learning from the schools, I think we've got to accept that it isn't uniform right across the board. I mean, say my 14-year-old grandson, my son was extremely pleased to see that he's been having a full day's learning led by teachers online. Whereas the two younger ones that are at primary, they're lucky if they get enough work to last them an hour a day in the form of workbooks. And I think we have to try and get across to all the schools whenever possible. I do realise that, particularly where they're taking in vulnerable children and children of key workers, it puts extra pressure on them to also do online learning. To me, online learning led by a teacher is the goal that we should all the schools should be looking to do, and unfortunately not all of them are.
I think there's a couple of things. I think the most recent DFE guidance, which has just come out, talks about the most successful methods being a blended approach, and it shouldn't all be live learning, that there is a place for that, but that isn't necessarily the gold standard, in that being all of the learning. There should be a balance. But I think the other thing is that's where the work that we're doing with the foster carers and the so that we are, and with social workers, so that we're aware, and with designated teachers, that if an offer isn't meeting the child's needs, if it isn't right for the child, if the foster carer is experiencing what you're referring to there, Anne, that they are getting in Councillor Hayes, sorry, that they are getting in contact with us, and that we are then able to have that conversation with the school and really look at that. So that comes to us via the foster care, which is why it's really important that the foster carer knows that that's what they need to be doing. But also, obviously, we have got the table within the PEP that I referred to, where it does talk about the child's level of engagement. So if that's alerting us that, if the offer isn't something that's any appealing to the child, or the child isn't engaging in that offer, then that should then be highlighted to us through the PEP. And at that point, we would obviously be making contact with the school to have a conversation about that.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks for your reports, and thanks for being here and answering all the questions. That's great. So we move on to agenda item 7, which is the university experience of care leavers in relation to COVID-19, and an update on the local offer for care leavers. And Joe Gilbert, who's a specialist personal advisor for local offer, is going to lead on this. And do we have Kerry, or do we have Kerry Seymour here, or do we have?
Oh, so sorry, I couldn't press unmute quickly. Yes, I am here.
Oh, you are here. Oh, it's just that people came in, so that's. We have Rebecca Callum. So I'll let you, who's the personal advisor for the NEETs and EATs. So I'll let you take that, Joe, and between you and tell us what you want us to hear.
Thank you, Chair. So a few points from the report that I'd like to highlight are, firstly, sections 2.2 and 2.3, which presents the current breakdown of the circumstances of our care experienced young people currently at university and the arrangements that they have in place. We're in regular contact with all of our young people and also their universities to help support them through their studies, to identify any issues they might encounter and to help them engage with any support that's available to them. Section 3.1 demonstrates some of the issues of our young people attending university have faced during the pandemic, some of which have been positive. As John mentioned in the previous report, anonymised space of online lectures and also virtual engagement has actually been positive for some of our young people. And where young people have found self-isolating challenging or struggled, we've worked with the universities to put a support network of professionals in place. From our assessments, we don't feel that our young people at university have been disadvantaged from their peers in relation to COVID-19, but our personal advisor teams and our education, employment and training coordinator, Rebecca, who's on the call, continue to work closely with both our care leavers and directly with universities to ensure that our young people have the same opportunities to succeed at university as their peers do. The other main area of the focus of the report is our local offer. So as mentioned in sections 2.5 and 2.6, over the past year, we've taken a new approach to support our young people and to help them engage with their transition into independence by reaching out to other organisations on a regional and national level to collaborate support already available or to form new initiatives with them. And also by looking at how we can best use our own resources as corporate parents to benefit our young people. Having this dedicated focus has allowed us to become more responsive and fluid with the support our care leavers can access. As an example of this, in March last year, during the first lockdown, we were able to organise and supply hampers of food, toiletries, face masks and other essentials to those care leavers that needed it. Section 1.7 as well outlines a few of the initiatives we have developed over the past year, where we've gone above and beyond the statutory basics, so to speak, to ensure that our young people are well supported in their transition into independence. An example of this is our mentoring scheme outlined in section 1.8. And this has been a brilliant example of providing our young people with more positive role models who can work with them to help them achieve their potential. These mentors come from a range of different backgrounds and life experiences, mostly from local businesses, and they've all been fully trained on relevant issues such as attachment and trauma. Currently, all of the mentees are engaging with their mentors and working together on issues that have been identified by the young people themselves. And so far, we can see some fantastic work and some really positive outcomes emerging from this. It's currently a pilot and we hope to evidence the success of this and expand it in the future. But section 3.3 is another important one to highlight, and it's been a major focus for us. This is digital poverty. The COVID-19 pandemic has really exposed the disadvantage that some of our young people have faced with terms of digital access, many of whom were initially attempting to complete college courses on their phones or with no internet connection at their accommodation. We're really pleased to be able to respond to this demand rapidly and manage to access laptops and connectivity devices early on in the pandemic and distribute these to those who had the most pressing need and manage to ensure that there were no breakdowns in college placements due to the inability to attend virtually. We understand the impact that not having a suitable device or an internet connection can have on a young person these days in terms of education, job interviews, being connected with family or peers. So over the past year, we've obtained laptops, tablets and connectivity devices from a variety of sources and are still working as a priority to ensure that none of our young people are disadvantaged in the ever more digitally reliant world. Since writing this report, we've also now confirmed the agreement with IT mentioned in 3.3 to be able to provide us with a sustainable source of devices for our young people by repurposing unused county council laptops. And one of the final points to highlight would be the Kickstart scheme from central government mentioned in 3.5. The Leaving Care teams and the HR teams of both Cambridgeshire County Council and Peterborough City Council are working together on this to try to prioritise our care experienced young people for these placements and offer support to them throughout the duration of the placement. There will be 30 Kickstart placements rolling out across Peterborough and Cambridgeshire between now and December, which hopefully our care experienced young people will be keen to engage with to give them paid experience and relevant training at a local authority and hopefully lead to other opportunities as well. So this is a fantastic example of utilising our own resources as a large employer in Cambridgeshire to support our own young people, upskill them and give them the opportunity to achieve their potential. And I'd also just kind of add on at the end there that what John and Claire were talking about with the audit, we're looking to do something similar for care leavers and really identify some of our young people's aspirations and then match that with location. And we'll be working with the virtual school and with Sarah Jo to approach some of these businesses and look at creating more opportunities in the area. So these are just a few selected highlights of the report, but please let me know if you've got any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Kerry and Rebecca, do you want to come in and add to that? Good that you're here, Rebecca.
Yes, I just thought, actually thinking what John was talking about, our unaccompanied asylum seekers, I think people might be interested to know that we've always done very well with our number of unaccompanied asylum seekers who go on to higher education. And, you know, we see, you know, we're perhaps a bit of a sort of above average authority in the numbers that of US particularly that go on to university. I mean, we out of our 24 young people that are currently studying at university, 4 of them came to us as unaccompanied asylum seekers, and in fact we have 2 who are you know, intending to go, you know, next year. You know, so that's I thought people might be interested to know that, you know, that we are aiming to support these US through from doing kind of ESOL to university, which I think feels like quite a great achievement, actually.
Thanks, Rebecca. That's really, really good. It's good to see you. We used to see each other having coffee when we were discussing the business mentoring program, but it seems an age ago now. So, Kerry, would you like to add to what Jo and Rebecca have said, or?
Well, I mean, both Jo and Rebecca have obviously been quite detailed in you know, summarising the report. I guess what you know, when we were compiling this report together, I think what was evident is that actually we weren't facing any more challenges than any other university student, which was kind of, you know, reassuring for us. You know, we have done a lot of work in the background, ensuring that these care leavers are well supported, and that continues, you know, whether it be through Rebecca or the PAs, both in regards to their university and their studying, and also overall their well-being. But other than that, I don't have anything more to add to the report.
If I could just ask before I throw it open to the others, you know, how about accommodation? Because that's obviously quite a difficult one for those who are not in care, and maybe more difficult for those who have less stable accommodation, or perhaps that doesn't apply if they're at university. Are you waving your hand, Rebecca?
Yes, so I can address that. I mean, one of the interesting things about children in care who go to university, and again, we're very typical authority with this, is that a lot of our care leavers are a little bit older. So, you know, I think we had 3 that went this year out of the 10 that started who were only 18. The rest were all older. And so quite a number of our young people already have their own sort of settled accommodation before they go to university. So in fact, quite a few have already obtained their own social housing. Others are in sort of, you know, private rented. And so actually our numbers in what you might call university halls of residence type accommodation has been quite small. I think we've only had 5 this year in university halls of residence. So I think it's always easier to sort of commute to university and come back to your own home, particularly when we've been in a kind of lockdown, a tier kind of system. I mean, I been very proactive in being in contact with the universities that our young people go to, and particularly those that have been in halls of residence. And actually, universities generally, as a group, have I think, particularly from the pandemic, you know, in the spring, kind of realised not only did they have care leavers who were sort of stuck in halls with nowhere to go, but they actually had quite large numbers of overseas students who couldn't get home. And so I think certainly by the autumn, you know, universities had each of their individual own sort of plans and supports, and again were proactively trying to contact students. So I think I saw my role very much as, you know, sort of raising awareness. Do you realise you've got our young person at your university? He is a care leaver. You know, he will be staying in accommodation because, you know, this is kind of his main home because he's moved here. But we've only got 2 who have university accommodation as their sort of main accommodation, and they are both older ones, and so have kind of made private arrangements with friends and things for things like the Christmas break.
Okay, that's absolutely great. Thank you. Daniel, you said you wanted to say something. Is that because you're leaving us?
Thank you, Chair. Sorry. Councillor Hay has just asked me to let you know that her computer has had to restart for an update, so she's just left and she will be back.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much indeed. So Adela, Councillor Costello, who will have a question.
Yes, I'm quite interested in this, well, digital poverty. I think it's brilliant that you've managed to get grants and help all the care leavers to access laptops and all the rest of it. My question is, I suppose, once they've been given a laptop, is that it, or are they on loan? Because I'm thinking at the moment with COVID, there are grants available and so much money is being made available, but say in 3 years down the line, won't our care leavers be in a similar position, and will we be in a position to assist them?
I'm happy to come back on that one, if that's okay. Yes, so there's a mix here. So there was an allocation from Department of Education, and we believe these are on a loan basis. We're not entirely sure about what would happen about them coming back, but that's what some of the laptops were for. But we also got grant funding, and these are for the care leavers to keep. So they would be able to keep their laptop, they'd be able to keep the internet dongle they've got with it to connect to the internet, and that would be theirs completely. And then also with the repurposed county council laptops, these would also be completely theirs to keep. They're completely responsible for it. One of the brilliant things about the county council laptops is they can all be used remotely. They've got the ability to have a SIM card in. So if they are staying somewhere like the YMCA where they don't have Wi-Fi in all of the rooms, for example, that they can actually still connect to the internet, or if they move placement, they're not going to have to worry about an internet connection. And again, this will be theirs to keep. One of the worries we've got, of course, is that this situation is here to stay. So we did want to make it sustainable. Everyone coming out of care next year will have the same issues ahead of them. So the arrangement with IT is a really good step forward into just making sure that as we go forward with this, we've always got something available for our young people leaving care, transitioning into independence, and being able to have a device or internet.
Thank you. Any more questions? Because I was just going to ask one. It's a really, really positive report, and we've been waiting for this because obviously we know there's been a huge amount of work gone on about the local offer. Now, access is through participation. Shall I ask Joe? Access to the participation group and the Children in Care Council and so on is great. But I wondered whether we would be able to get some surveys, too hard work because everybody's surveyed to death now, but some anecdotal support from these youngsters, or anecdotal statements from these youngsters about the way they've been looked after in COVID for the care leavers. The ones I don't want to put too much onus on this, but sometimes one only captures information which is negative, and I think it's really important that positive information like this and the approach that the youngsters have been experiencing might not have happened pre-COVID, and I think there might have been almost a sea change in the way that we work with them. I don't know, what's your view?
Yeah, I think you're right, and I do hear snippets of this coming back from the person advisor. I'm often one step removed, but for example, at one of the leaving care team meetings today, they were talking about the impact that some of this support has helped with for our young people. Going back to even things like the hampers and the essentials that they've been given, and it's not just kind of helping them at a time when they need, but it's also showing that people care and they're thinking about them. And I think someone was absolutely blown away, one of our young people today, when they realised that the laptop they're being given they didn't have to pay for, and they just didn't expect it. And I think they were overwhelmed by the fact that someone had gone out of their way to arrange this for them, give it to them, and it was at no cost to themselves. So we definitely do hear a lot about the benefits of kind of working in this approach. But I think you're right, maybe there needs to be a way of kind of not a survey, but bringing it all together somehow.
I just think that, bearing in mind that one of our actions really as the corporate parenting subcommittee is to engage our corporate parents with what's going on, so that they understand the role that they haven't physically played in doing this. Nevertheless, the corporate parents have behaved as a parent would in looking after their youngsters at this particular time, and I think it's a good story to tell, and I think the corporate parents would like to hear it. So Nicola's put her hand up there.
So thank you, Councillor Avery. Just to say that we are capturing, so I know there isn't in this particular report, but there certainly are what we call impact reports that are looking at the positive impacts of social work, social care intervention generally, but it has looked quite specifically at the impact of intervention during COVID as well as before, really to try and compare and contrast. And we have had a lot of very positive feedback about how interestingly, the virtual changes have impacted for care leavers particularly, because it is a very different group, isn't it? These are actually adults and some of them are at a distance, and actually they've had some views about it. So we are collating that. I'm very happy. I know Anna has left us now, but I'm very happy to take back to Sika and Anna a request for a more specific piece from the care leavers themselves around it. But we have actually got some very positive feedback already, so I just didn't want you to feel we haven't captured that, and we can ask that to be packaged into the next report to the committee, if that be helpful. So that's absolutely fine, we can do that.
Can I just add, I mean, I think one of the interesting things is that our numbers of care leavers, particularly who are in education, training and employment, has sort of stayed pretty stable throughout the lockdown. And I think one of the reasons is that we've actually been able, because of the work that Jo has done in terms of obtaining, you know, technology for our young people, we've had young people who've been able to do sort of online learning opportunities, and so we've given them the tools to make use of the kind of courses that have been available. And again, thinking of sort of positive stories, you know, I can think of a couple of people who did online courses and have then gone on to jobs as a result of those online courses. That, you know, so but the positive was that because we gave them the technology, and I think partly because some of them were in a lockdown, there wasn't much else to do, we got them hooked back into education, so it was a bit, you know, it was a bit of an opportunity. And I think that is looking at sort of hard data, the fact that our EAT figures have stayed very static, we haven't seen a big, you know, increase in NEET, I think is you know, a bit of good news there.
That's really good, because and I mean, what has happened because of COVID, we suddenly have a huge number of volunteers that we never had doing all sorts of things, and capturing all of this and holding on to it, the best of what we've had, not obviously the worst, is something which I think we want to look at. So thank you very much indeed for your report, and thank you for coming to the meeting. And we've been asked to note the work being carried out to support our care leavers at university during COVID-19 and the innovative approach of the local offer for care leavers. And I think, councillors, I'd just like to say, we haven't finished yet, I'm sorry, but that actually the journey story that we've had today, I think has been really, really useful to get an idea of what's actually happening. So now we're going to move on to the thorny issue, if I may say, or perhaps not, of health. Okay, so we're on item number 8, and this is the health update report, which is going to be introduced by Catherine. So thank you very much for being with us all this time, Catherine, because I know you have, sitting there, who's the designated nurse for children in care. And John, we welcome back. We hadn't seen him for a couple of times, I think, is also here, and he's the Service Director for Children and Young People's Health Services at Cambridgeshire Community Services NHS Trust. So over to Catherine and John.
Thank you, Councillor Every. So if I start and just go through the report, John, if you're happy with that, and then we'll pick up. So obviously, like all services, and education have captured it beautifully, the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on service for health as well, only currently greater on health because of the mass vaccine programme that we're now delivering as well. So services are under huge pressure. So it's about really giving an overview of what the main issues are for health and for our children in care in that time. But I've captured the main points, but I think it might be really useful just to have the conversation around, or me just to bring to the table the fact that health is a really big beast. And when people talk about health, it sounds like it's all under one neat umbrella or something, and actually that's not how it is at all. So you know, when we look at health, obviously the pandemic affects both the emotional and mental health services and physical health services, but you know, our children access lots of services, and that might be something from the Child Development Centre, which would then have them accessing speech and language therapy, occupational therapy, or a whole range of different things. We've got GP services, we've got you know, optometry services, we've got private you know, dental services, and you know, eye services and things through opticians. So it's a huge big beast. So with that in mind, obviously I can only focus on a certain amount of things. So I'm here today as the designated nurse for children in care. So one of my points in the report is that I started in post. So I've only come into post at the end of November, so it's only a short time ago. Obviously I'm still getting to grips with things, but I feel I'm on top of things enough to report today, so that's good. So obviously COVID will continue, as we know, and the impacts will continue. We do have, from a CCG point of view, you know, measures in place to ensure quality and get assurances from our provider services through the contracts, and are working with colleagues in all our provider services. Additionally to community services, obviously we have acute hospitals, and you know, it's a big setting, so we've got lots of robust systems in place for monitoring that. So in terms of immediate children in care services, we've got a meeting that happens, which started from the start of the COVID pandemic, in terms of meetings with health and social care practitioners. And the health practitioners on board in that meeting are those from the Children in Care Health team. They're the team who meet our statutory requirement around health assessments and having an oversight of health. So they're involved in that meeting, and it's a cross Peterborough and Cambridgeshire meeting, which is really invaluable, and has allowed, I mean, obviously I'm new to the meeting, but I can see really clearly the work that's been done to talk week on week, because initially the meetings were weekly, week on week, about the challenges, how things were going to manage, how the national guidance would be embedded into practice, how things would be managed, how we would maintain a service to have that oversight and undertake health assessments, what the challenges are with anything to do with health, really. And having colleagues from both Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, I can see allowed lots of open and honest conversations and discussions about things that we could learn from each other's experiences, and it's just really, really invaluable. So those meetings are currently fortnightly, and still continue to have good representation and have valuable output. So that's really good. Initial and review health assessments, and I know this was alluded to earlier about, you know, it's all about the performance of those. This is a statutory requirement, and yes, we have targets for those, and we really expect 100% performance against those. Reality tells us that, with some people refusing, young people who decline to have it, rather than refuse, sorry, decline to have them, and some challenges in the system, that, you know, we would, if we achieve 95%, we'd, you know, be really happy. So so they are important, and the reason they're important is A, because it's a statutory function, but it's a function for a purpose, in as much as it provides an oversight of health. So for children under 5, they are seen twice a year in the system for a health assessment, and those over 5 up to the 18th birthday, it's once a year. And when children come into care, and there's an initial health assessment which is undertaken by a paediatrician, and that happens within 20 working days of a child or young person coming into care. And the idea of those is that it gives a really good overview. There's a, you know, thorough history gathering, and, you know, a physical examination under ordinary terms by the paediatrician, young person permitting. And so that it's a really holistic oversight of health. The review health assessments then follow up on things that are picked up in the initial health assessment or the previous review health assessment. So it's a real oversight, and it's invaluable. It doesn't provide everything. Our young people still access their GP and still access other core services. So this is making sure that everything's happening. Any issues that are picked up are followed through, referrals are made. Foster carers, like any other parents, have responsibility for children and young people's health. So it's about supporting those. So during COVID, well, since March, The health assessments, whether initial or review, have been done by a virtual platform. And then any child or young person that it's considered they need to be seen face to face, then that will happen either by the member of the Children in Care Health team or by another service if the referral's appropriate for another service. We had a discussion today at the joint meeting about how we can support foster carers to do that, how we would look at each child and home setting individually and what's appropriate. So again, it's a supportive environment for foster carers and residential setting staff as well. Feedback is generally really good about the review, about the health assessment process being virtual. And actually what the team is saying is that some young people who previously probably wouldn't have engaged or haven't engaged with their review health assessment have actually been happy to do that because it's remote, something they're familiar with, it's a different environment, they don't feel so exposed. So they've been happy to do that. So that's really positive, and obviously other young children and young people have found it a good platform as well to do. I've said in the report, support for social workers, young people, foster carers and other agencies have continued. What I didn't actually say there when I reread it was the fact that it's the Children in Care Health team, the support that they offer to those services has continued, so that hasn't been affected. And that's, again, really valuable to helping support the overall health of children. As part of my role, I have to undertake a quality audit around, the health assessments, what is the quality like, and also the designated doctor, Dr. Aslam, she will do the initial health assessments. So that will take place before the end of March, and I pick at random a number of health assessments and review those, and that'll be for children placed both in our area and children placed within other areas where another health team is undertaking those. So it's about quality of those, to make sure that everything that we would expect is seen, so that we hear the voice of that child or young person. We pick up any new health issues, referrals are made, and any previous referrals were followed up on, and that the summaries are good and clear and appropriate to be distributed as we do. And part of that is that I haven't quite started that yet, but what I have done is drawn up an audit template for understanding a little bit more about how we have done those health assessments in this period of remote working, and that's going to happen before I do the next bit, because what will happen is we're going to look at I want to look at how everything's going, how many children, young people didn't have the IT support to have the remote services, how what the feedback is, lots of aspects of it, the sort of the practicalities of it. Are there any challenges, are there any barriers to doing that? Because the reason for that is at some point we're going to go into recovery, and we need to know what the service is going to look like moving forward. So that information is really invaluable, so I want to really capture that before I then look at specifically the quality. So early in the new financial year, I'll be in a position to sort of give all that feedback and look at what that has meant to our children and young people and our foster carers and residential units supporting them. So I've also identified in the report that there's the UASC pathway continues to be monitored, and that's especially around the delivery of the bloodborne viruses. So that's ongoing work. And the Refugee Council have now been commissioned to provide a wellbeing and work for refugee integration service, which can be utilised by any unaccompanied asylum seeking young people, and it has an element, as I say, of wellbeing therapy service. So young people can access that. It doesn't replace mental health services. It's sort of that lower level. But if people have experiencing anxiety or trauma, that could be a first point of call, and then they could direct on to other services. And dental services, I've made a note about that in the report because, again, through the joint meeting, it was raised that there was difficulties in accessing some dental services. So again, all emergency services are accessible, but dental services, I think, were starting to struggle prior to the COVID, but from the initial lockdown, they're getting back into getting routine dental checks and things has proven to be quite challenging. So that's been raised with NHS England and Public Health England, and so our head of safeguarding, Sarah Hamilton, has agreed to do some work with the regional team and things around how we do improve that situation. So that's everything that's in the report, but I guess what I just wanted to say is at the beginning, or what I was asked to do was include the health of all children, including those with disability. So whether a child has a disability or not, all the services are the services. Additionally, for children with a disability, is that the specialist schools have a lot of input and support for children, and also the children's complex care team as well. And all those services continue, though it might all be in a slightly different format, but the services are still there, so the children are still receiving the care that they need. And I think that's everything from me at the moment. John, if you have anything to add.
I was going to say thank you very much. I didn't realise you'd only gone into post in November, so early days from you. I just wanted to, on behalf of the committee, to welcome you, but to also say how concerned we have been over this period of time about the health assessments and the dental assessments, and much before COVID. And I'm sure Anna might very well want to say something. And you heard what she said earlier on about wanting feedback. And of course, we do have the dashboard, which Nicola will be talking to us about next on the agenda, which shows clearly the percentage of what's happened against the targets. And it is those things that, now you're with us, we are going to drill down with you and we'll let you have another month to get in, and then we'll be focusing on really what's happened. I mean, you've told us that things are continuing, but we have not been happy from our monitoring perspective about those for the initial health assessments, and certainly not about the dental care as well. Both of those two have been raised quite considerably, and we haven't sort of looked at it because of COVID, but now we're back and we want to look at that. And I know John will say something now.
Yes, Councillor Ovey, thank you. You know I'm committed to try and improve this knotty problem of the timeliness of these assessments, and that's the issue, isn't it? It's the 20 working day issue. And just to pick up that small point that Catherine said, that's quite an important thing, the audit she's talking about doing, the good thing about that is that what that looks at is the quality of those assessments, so not just the timeliness of them, which is important, it's statutory, I get that, I'm not trying to play it down because we do struggle to meet the 20 days, but what that audit will look at is actually how good are the assessments, what do they lead to in terms of outcomes for those children and young people. So it is a really important piece of work, and one that I'm sure, Catherine, you will bring back here for the committee to have an oversight over. Why do we struggle with that target? There are a number of reasons. You've heard me say them all before. There's some processy bits, but that's better. So the weekly meeting that Catherine talked about, and get involved with Nicola's teams to try and make sure that the consent arrives in a timely way, because that eats into the 20 days. Obviously, we've had some staffing issues over COVID, which have exacerbated some of our difficulties. The children and young people who decline, that doesn't help us. but overall we should do better. We keep saying it, we should do better. And sorry, the other bit is the children in and out of county. We do far better with children in county in terms of the timeliness. It's harder more remotely, and of course the virtual working, I know Nicola's will say this, should be able to assist us, because obviously we don't physically have to rely on another service necessarily, or indeed travel. So we should be able to improve on those points. But I'll allow questions, because there's bound to be lots.
Yes, but you know I'd say that, didn't you, John? Because,
yes, of course. Yeah.
So, right. Any question, Anna? What a surprise! So.
Yeah, exactly. And I know. Forgive me if I'm completely out of order here, but in all truth, I didn't know that we had a designated nurse for corporate parent for our looked after children until I read that we hadn't had one for 8 months.
Yes.
So I'm really sort of slightly shocked that we haven't had one for 8 months. I'm very, very glad to hear that we've got Catherine York on board now, and I just wanted, if you'll forgive me for asking it, Chairman, and if you'll forgive me for asking it, Catherine, as you've just got into place, have you immediately been struck by a real concern with regard to our children because we haven't had a designated nurse so far? Is there something that you really have identified as being missing or in deficit because we haven't had a designated nurse?
So my role is strategic. So obviously I need to have that oversight of things. In the gap, there was the head of safeguarding who provides oversight instead of me. So she obviously doesn't, her speciality, as it were, isn't children in care per se, but obviously has a good understanding of children in care. And equally, I have to say that the children in care health team lead really, before unfortunately he was off sick, really helped support the head of safeguarding and the service leads in managing things and having an oversight. And in her absence, her counterpart from Peterborough has done a sterling job as well. So are there any gaps? So I guess what, in the absence of a designated nurse, is there would be prioritising of oversight, really, rather than having the ability to dig down into some of the other things. So one of the things that I've started already, in as much as the healthcare lead has just come back to work, is already met with her and looking at how we can improve what's happening. How can we look at what's happening with both the review health assessments and the initial health assessments and the targets? There's lots of work has been going on, so that it's not that the work has stopped, it's just probably not being pushed along as quickly as it might have been had I been in post earlier. Yes, so that would be the main thing, really. And then obviously that they've, the team as a whole have looked at, as I say, the priorities. And so yeah, I think for me, some of the things are around moving things forward, are just around having much greater oversight. So I need to understand much more about the local services, and working with the children in care health team and the service manager to really improve on the performance around the things that the areas that they're responsible for, because they have been, as John has agreed, haven't been where they should be, and we need to move that forward.
So can I come back quickly?
You can, of course.
Thank you. So I appreciate that's hard for you to assimilate in the early stages of your role, but I wondered if, for example, you have we effectively been relying on our foster carers to look after our children's health? And that's not unreasonable, because they're foster carers. and they would look after a child as a parent would, and they are. So I'm just wondering, are there things like, for example, has it been hard to get dental care sorted out? Has it been hard to get, for example, mental health assessments? Are there specific things that have maybe dropped down the agenda that you think you might need to pick up carefully with?
So I think, when you say, have we relied on foster carers to look after health, that is part of the role of a foster carer, as any parent, as I said at the beginning. So I don't think that that's increased. I'd be very surprised that had increased. In terms of what's needed, like the dental issues, that's been an ongoing issue, which I'm sure the previous designated nurse was aware of. It's not just local to this area, it is quite a national issue. But as soon as it was recognised that it was a problem now, that was picked up by the head of safeguarding, because the children in care teams leads had raised it as an issue. So that's why that meeting's been really good. So when you say, have things been not attended to, I think the things that have been raised that are priorities within that meeting, the day-to-day things throughout COVID, have been handled and managed appropriately. I think for me, it's about now having that specialist oversight and having the focused time to do that. Because when it's picked up, obviously, when things are picked up by somebody else who it's not their full role to do, obviously they've still got other things. So it maybe doesn't stay quite as high on their agenda as it would do. But certainly things have been progressed without a doubt. And I think,
could I ask Nicola to come in there, because she's been sort of obviously waiting for a while. Sorry, Nicola.
Thank you, Councillor Every. I think to be fair to Catherine, it's a little bit difficult, Councillor Bradman, for her to talk about what was happening when she wasn't in post. So I think just to reassure the committee, our previous nurse was Deborah Spencer, who I think you probably will have known. And it was, we were very sorry to see Deborah go. She was excellent, although I'm sure Catherine will be just as brilliant. But we were very conscious of the gap, and I did liaise very carefully with Sarah Hamilton, who's the safeguarding, and also with John. And Sarah, to be fair, I think stepped in very significantly despite her other responsibilities into the role. And she meets with me, just to reassure you, she meets with me fortnightly at the moment, and has done for some months. So we have various avenues where we can pick up strategic issues. And I think Catherine's role, if the committee remembers, is to pull things together and have kind of a strategic oversight of things that are happening. Individual children and individual children's health needs should be being addressed, yes, by their foster carer, but also, let's not forget, by their children's social worker. So I've got some very vocal social workers who have made me very aware of particular issues and concerns. And we had one young woman, for example, who needed very significant dental treatment, which had got very delayed because of COVID and the dentist not being available. And actually, the social worker came and hounded me about that one. And Sarah then arranged for this young woman to have specialist treatment. So we've got various mechanisms to pick up individual children's health needs. They have continued to have health assessments, and John is absolutely right. I would agree the timeliness continues to be an issue, which we are going to crack. And we do have much tighter new processes in place, which should start to see a very significant improvement, but they are happening. So they may not happen within the 20 working days, but they are happening. And then we have the assessment from that piece of work that we then take forward. Catherine herself, or that role, don't do the health assessments. So all of those things have still been happening, and children have had their needs met. What we haven't had, and we're very grateful to have Catherine in post now, is some of the strategic thinking and the join up in that way. And just to be clear, that it wasn't, we have been advertising, or that, health have been advertising religiously through that period. They just are difficult roles to fill, and difficult to get the right person. And we're very pleased that we do now have Catherine, and she's working really closely with Myra and Fiona already to try and move some of these things on. but I wouldn't want anyone to have the impression that individual children's needs weren't being met in that period where we had that vacancy.
I think that's reassuring, because from our perspective, of course, it's the impact on children that we're monitoring. Absolutely. And what experiences they have. And I don't want Catherine to feel that this is not a good place to come and answer questions, because it is, because we're all singing off the same hymn sheet here. So which is really good. So really sorry to sort of do that, but that is reassuring, and but it's something that we will keep an eye on. Yes, please, will you please come back and tell us how things are going? We get the dashboard, and I know that's only an overview, but that's really helpful. So welcome, Catherine. We are delighted you're here, and we look forward to working with you. And we look forward, and John's obviously, to get these timings right. And as you say, it's the impact of the quality of the assessments which is important on those children's lives. So and obviously on the lives of the foster parents who are looking after it. And Kevin's put his hand up. Yes. Where's he gone?
Sorry, I couldn't find a button to press. I just thought I would just come in on that, because I've had a placement during the COVID, and actually the paediatric assessment was done. I was just looking in my diary to see exactly how many days, but I would say within a couple of weeks of the children coming. So that did work. And dental issues, I had to raise a difficulty there because I couldn't get into a dentist, and I was helped by the IRO actually and the children's social worker. Turned out we got back into the dentist and it was all fine. But I have had personal experience as a foster carer of that kind of path and avenue working. So I can't speak for everybody, but it has worked for me. So.
Well, that's also reassuring, because there's nothing like the anecdote on the ground, is there, that puts these into perspective. So thank you very much indeed. And I have no more blue hands, and we'll work together on this. And just the recommendations was to note the content of this report and raise any queries with the lead officers, which I think we've done. So now this is the corporate parenting scorecard, which is Nicola's item.
Thank you, Councillor. And I'm just conscious of time for everybody. So I'm not going to go into things, and I was going to talk a little bit about health and dental, but I'm absolutely not going to do that now, because I think we've spoken about that. So just to really highlight that we have seen in this scorecard a very slight increase in numbers of children in care, but actually overall, and certainly since the scorecard was done, those numbers are continuing to be on a downward trend. So we are continuing to have less children in care. Caseloads are a little bit high for social workers, so I'm very conscious of that, and I'll be working with Myra I can't see, so I suspect she's her connection's gone again, but I'll be working with Myra to look at those with social workers and to see what we can do about that. But the other caseloads are very pleasing, actually. In terms of stat visits, just to highlight to members, we for children in care, we have obviously had a hybrid approach of having virtual visits and then some in-person visits. And initially our system couldn't differentiate or couldn't count the virtual visits. So our numbers went down fairly dramatically. It looked like we weren't having any contact with our children. That's not correct. And certainly from, I think, going forward from the next report, you will see very specifically broken down which ones are virtual visits, which ones are in-person visits. But obviously, because of the new lockdown, we're now back in a position where the vast majority of those visits will again be virtual. So just to let you know that. And then I think the other thing is members will be aware that the RAA went live on the 1st of December. And so there will now be a much more tailored focus on the adoption statistics, but actually those compared to nationally, because what we know from the region and talking to others is actually we're still doing very well generally in terms of adoption. I don't know how that will continue. Some of that is a bit beyond our control, and there is a downward trend generally in terms of placement orders and adoption for young people. But generally speaking, we're quite happy with that. But that's all I'm going to say. If people have got questions, obviously I'm very happy to take them.
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm mindful of time, and I'm sort of after 6 o'clock. So I have Councillor Bradnam, sorry, Anna, and then Anne, Councillor Hay.
Just a very quick one, Chairman. It's just to say I have to leave by about 6:20 because I have another meeting.
Right, Anne.
It's not about the actual content of the report, it's more about the layout. I actually printed this out, and I don't know who's done it, but on legal status of children in care and education, I can't read it because it's blue writing on a darker black blue block on a lighter blue background, and when you print it out, you just cannot read it. Can you be aware of that when you put these colours on?
Of course I can, and I do apologise, Councillor Hayes. So I'll go back. I think we'd asked BI to change it a bit, and I think probably they've tried to meet what you asked before. But I will go back and clarify that with them. Absolutely, of course.
Thank you very much. I have to say the format and having a dashboard like this is really, really useful because one can do comparisons much more easily than having a very long report to read through. So I'd like to thank the people who put this together, and obviously it's work in progress. So well done, everybody. So we've been asked to note and comment. No more blue hands, so we've done that. So we're on the last stretch here. Okay, so we're now on to the workshop and training plan. Fantastic training we had last time when we decided how we were going to take things forward, and which COVID interrupted with us, but nevertheless our plans are there. But certainly I think we decided to put on hold the members' seminar, which I think all departments have done that. It's quite difficult, isn't it, to get, and I know, when you've been sitting on Zoom all day, to sit on it even more to do some training. So, but I don't know whether, Nicola, you or Fiona, you had, or indeed Myra. Have we met Myra? I'm really sorry, but I'm not sure. Have I met Myra? She's not there now, but maybe.
So no, I'm really sorry, and I would just like to apologise to the committee. I couldn't quite find a place to introduce her, and then she's gone. So I will be arranging introductory meetings, but obviously we had Christmas, I'm afraid, is what's delayed it. But I will be doing meetings for everybody. So Myra is, as Fiona said, the head of corporate parenting, and you'll be aware that she's now managing services across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough in that respect. So that's the children in care teams and care leavers. And then Fiona is responsible for all of fostering, adoption, supervised contact, RAPs. I'm going to forget something, Fiona. Though more of our provider services arm, if you like, across both local authorities as well. And it's very early days. They only divided up in December. So it's just happened. So there's still bits where there's overlap. But I think I would say in our very early days, it from my perspective, certainly it's working really well. But I will set up some meetings for people to meet as soon as I can.
And outside this meeting, we can catch up on that information for members, can't we? So that's fine. So about the local offer seminar, are we going to put that on hold? Joe, what do you think about that?
Sorry, I was just on mute. I think the last that we were at was we were planning to still go ahead with it, as long as that's okay with members as well. We were looking to plan it, and I think Kate Knight is working to choose a date, probably in February or March. But happy to take on board your thoughts and other members' thoughts as well.
I think that would be a nice. It's just that we haven't had any, and but we wanted to get the timing right, didn't we, before the launch in April? So yeah, I get that. So if you could continue with that with Fiona, that would be great. Thank you.
Absolutely fine.
And then the next meeting would have been should be an informal meeting with our young people, and it's sort of how are we going to do that? But I think we're trying to put our heads around what might work, and we haven't got the solution yet. But I think outside this meeting, we'll be able to contact you all and have a dialogue about how that might work, if that's okay with you, Nicola and Fiona.
Chairman, it sounds as though the young people would prefer to engage with us online anyway, so that might be the way to go.
Yes, it was the initial, and they're doing it in Peterborough because they know each other. It was the initial idea of engaging us online in a foster carers environment with their own equipment and managing that, because one of the things we had said was that they would be with the social worker on the first day, just to get that familiarity in order to create the atmosphere and environment that we're trying to create, if that makes any sense.
So yes, so sorry, so yes, it was just they were going to be in a room together, Councillor Bradnam, and then do it virtually. So we all really want to do it, and I think they really want to do it as well, can I just say. So they were very frustrated as well. So we are going to have another think and discussion about how we can possibly try and do it. So we will come back to you as soon as we can. Yes. But we just need to try and work it through.
You've got to have virtual pizza.
And Chair, I'm going to have to leave now, but if you can just put somewhere in your item, looking at future placements, if we can as a subcommittee think about how frequently we want to have reports on health. I'll leave that with you to think about it.
Thank you very much indeed. I'll talk to Rishendra about that, and also pick up Alicia's point that you wanted to do on the forward agenda. I haven't forgotten.
Yes, please. Thank you. I was just, if you'll forgive me, I will try and take as little time as possible, but I need to outline where the issue came from. So I referenced a report that we took in January 2020. So that was item 6 on the agenda for the meeting that we had on the 15th of January 2020, where we took a report on improving the emotional health and well-being of children looked after and young people living care. So that the report was authored by Dr. Pamela Parker, I now forget her name. The thing is, either shortly before or shortly after we took that report, Pamela resigned. And the reason why I was raising this point under the minutes before was that it was brought to my attention by some of the people that have been contacting me about this, is that the minutes say that she resigned to take up another post. That appears to be not true. She resigned, full stop. She didn't have another post to go to. But that was just a thing about what the minutes say.
Oh, I see.
Which somebody wanted me to note. It's been a year, and somebody wanted me to note that. The main point I was going to raise was around the fact that since when we took that report, we haven't had anything else on the subject in terms of the clinical and mental health services that we provide young people in care and living care. And I do apologize, this would have been better pre-arranged with me, by me with the chair and possibly Nicola, but the timing hasn't really worked. And I've only really started hearing about this basically in the last 7 days, so it's been quite difficult. The problem is that it seems that the team have had quite a bit of trouble since January. They've had lots of resignations because of the restructuring that they're doing, and the team used to have a force of about, I mean, obviously they run jointly with Peterborough. They had more than 10 people. There's now 3. And these 3 people seem to be in a state of unhappiness about what's happening with their team and the service that we're providing. And one of the problems seems to be that just now we're concluding the consultation on the restructuring that we're doing and the new posts that we're going to have, and the switch over to, I know this family safeguarding model, which children and young people discussed. So, I mean, the problem I have is that, I'm kind of slightly surprised that we didn't hear anything about this at all, because I'm not on children and I didn't know. And I think this is the kind of thing that we should know a bit more about. And if the timings had worked a bit better, I'd have begged for this item to happen, well, at this meeting. But we're not going to have a meeting now until June. And I know because I've spoken to Lou Williams, who's spent a lot of time on the phone with me, and I'm very grateful. But basically, because of some of the problems that the team have had, and the fact that they got a rating of fragmented by Ofsted in the last few months, I think it was February last year, and they're very worried about this, and they're worried about some of the things that are going to happen with the restructuring. I was wondering whether we could organize some kind of briefing for members, at least of this committee, soon. That was going to be my request.
Nicola, would you like to come back? with that, because I think that was, you were just about to do that, were you not? So
yes, thank you, Councillor Overy. So thank you for raising the issue. We have been doing a lot of work behind the scenes around trying to review the clinical service and what was the best thing to happen with it. Family safeguarding is a slightly separate piece of work, and that was implemented actually a year. We're at our anniversary. So that was implemented a year ago in some of the teams, but it did have an impact, you're right, on how we wanted to then look at clinical services and what we wanted to do with them. We are in the middle of a consultation with staff, which is one of the reasons why we haven't raised it publicly, because obviously that needs to happen with staff. And the outcome of the consultation is actually due tomorrow, which is very unhelpful for the timing of this meeting. So I can't go into detail around it, because obviously staff need to hear the outcome of that first. I think what we have got, though, is I had put onto the forward agenda bringing a report about the new service and what that would present. And I can't remember just off the top of my head, and I can't open it while I'm talking. I'm not very good at doing two things at once, but it is in there. And perhaps, I don't know if Fiona can double check it for me, but it's got Alison Bennett's name beside it, I think, if you can see it in there, Councillor Sheely. So I was going, who is responsible? So our Assistant Director in Safeguarding and Quality Assurance is responsible for this area of the service. And so I was going to be asking Alison to bring a report to the committee to talk through what the new service would look like and how it would relate to children in care. So we are going to bring it to committee. And that was always the plan. It's just it couldn't have come to this one because of the consultation. So what I would say is, I think, yes, it has been a little bit challenging for some of the staff. I think there are also staff who think a lot of the ideas are very positive. You know, it's always one of those things where some people have some views and other people have others. We feel that we're creating a service that actually will, once it's bedded in, offer a very strong service to children care, and in a lot of ways have a lot of similar components to the previous model. But it has been a bit of an adjustment, and the council will be delivering the service directly rather than CPFT, who've done it previously. That's really the biggest shift in all of this. But the fine detail of it is being worked through, and like I said, has to go to staff tomorrow. But I'm very happy to ask Alison to bring a report and go through it in detail once it's all finalised. I'm very happy to do that.
No, that'd be really good. I'll take advice in terms of the timing, how it would work best, because I do realise, you know, we're here to scrutinise, but we're not here, as Lou explained, to veto this. So, you know, not that I'm saying we would want to do that, but what I'm saying is, you know, we're here to scrutinise and ask the right questions, and you know, I was only taking a bit off balance by the fact that somebody raised it with me and I had no idea. But I think it would be very useful if we could get
Alicia,
something in a good, yes.
Because the next full meeting is not until June.
Yeah.
So, and I think this, I mean, when we had meetings more often, then it would have come, we could have got it for the next meeting. Is it possible, Nicola, for you to provide us with a briefing note when the time is right? So that when you've done your, so that we get the information in advance, and that will give individual councillors, if you're happy to do that, to ask you questions about things which perhaps wouldn't be discussed in this forum if they wish, and I think that would update everybody. And I appreciate the timing that you've got, because it's important staff know first, but if we could have a briefing note, that would be really helpful.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so we'll do a briefing note, but we will also bring it formally in June, so you have a chance to see it. So we'll do both. Yeah. Okay. Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and thank you for bringing it up, Alicia. So sorry, it's late, and thank you very much for your time today, and for all the officers for all the work that they've done and bringing to this very, very difficult times. And well done. The work you're doing is brilliant, and it's good to hear that the impact on our youngsters is as limited as it can be, and that's what we're here for, just to make sure that our youngsters continue to have those good experiences. So thank you very much indeed. And if you could go back to your own departments and pass on our thanks back to them, I'd be really grateful.
Of course.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you. Right.